Why, by the way? Because minorities in the UK currently are 13.7. Why? Because it's a bullshit figure. You have no reason at all. You're making it up to try and do better than other services because you're an absolute child and you're supposed to be the chief of air staff. You can see that me not drinking as much and actually lifting a massive amounts of weights is having a profound effect on my brilliance. Okay, welcome back to Fast Jet Performance there. My name is Tim Davies, and as you see, we're back in the attack shack, dropping truth bombs on your personal battlefields, helping you to win the wars you are fighting. And today we're going to look at yesterday's Defence Select Committee with Mike Wigston and Richard Knighton, where both of them, unfortunately, didn't do that well. And there's a reason for that, basically, because I think what lacks at the senior elements of the Royal Air Force is something called integrity, which is an absolute joke, seeing as their acronym for the Royal Air Force's RISE, respect, integrity, service and excellence, and they just kind of miss them all out really and do what they want. What's actually happened then, guys, I'm sure you know, if we go back to my videos from late last year, I put out a series of films that talked about the problems that the Royal Air Force are having in their recruitment policy. Now, the recruitment is run by Air Commodore Joe Lincoln. Above her then is Maria Byford, who's head of HR, and above her, of course, is Sir Mike Wigston, who's the chief of air staff. Now, all three of these people, in fairness, have gone and fucked up. I mean, and I was warning them about it, and I don't know, watching my YouTube channel or anything, I couldn't care less, but they have royally messed up. I probably will delete out the swear word there because I know some kids watch this channel. Now, we started off then looking at flying training and the problems within flying training, how problematic that is. And when Mike Wigston said yesterday that actually the front line was all full, it was only full because of the fact that when the airlines threw out the people that had gone there early, they all came back in and filled up the front line. We all know it. It's nothing Mike did. We actually looked at a lot of discrimination. Then we looked at the woke aspects of the Royal Air Force and what was happening in that. Absolutely awful. How they didn't actually want white men. What actually happened is what the Royal Air Force were doing, if you remember correctly from some of these videos, and you may not, is unlike the Royal Navy and the Army, who would just prioritize the top element of all the people that had passed their selection and would go, I'll take the top 30, please. The Royal Air Force would say, well, if you put people over, say, level of 88, then we'll put them in a special box. And that would just mean that they pass. And therefore, we can just take anyone out of that box, especially the people with the right skin color and the right gender, if that is the correct term now, basically women and minorities, and we can put them into the billets because we've only got 2.5% women, only got about 14% women, 2.5% minority, lower than any other service really, and we want to bolster that so to get ahead because we can. This email comes from 2021, but in the email you may well see that in this center paragraph here, it does say that the Chief of Air Staff's #1 priority for recruitment is BAME and women. I hate that term BAME, it's divisive, but we know what they mean. They mean the minorities and women. And they are saying that it allows a positive action. It didn't actually. It was positive discrimination was what they were doing. It is illegal. It's not a merit-based shifting system. And they had something called blind allocation that the Navy were using. The Royal Air Force switched that off, which meant the Royal Air Force could see the names and it could see the ethnicity and the gender of people it was selecting, whereas the Navy couldn't, you see. And what it was saying was that if a BAME candidate scored 88, they couldn't move in front of, say, a white male candidate that scored 89. They couldn't do it legally, as that would be positive discrimination. The Royal Air Force were doing this, and so they ignored the fact they were doing it. They carried on, and then I made some videos on it, called it out, and then people like Deborah Haynes and some other people just wrote it up in Sky, and that got a bit of traction, luckily, and helped us to then bring these people to account, which is what happened yesterday. I'm not going to play what happened yesterday. It was like 2.5 hours long. There'll be some snippets that you'll probably see. But what we will do is have a look at Deborah's write-up from Sky, and we'll look at the Telegraph as well. And we'll go through those articles, just pick out a few points. I'll give you my impressions about them. We'll wrap it up, and I'll leave you to go and do something more constructive than watch me. I'm pretty tired at the moment, guys. I just want to say that. I will be talking more about stuff I'm doing this year because I'm lifting weights early in the morning now, which stops me drinking myself into oblivion every night, which is what I was doing. I'm going to talk about that a lot. I'm going to talk about loneliness that people have been asked to talk about, especially as you kind of near, your middle years, your 50s and everything. And I just want to say something before I continue here, that when I did lose my job last year for highlighting this stuff, I guess I whistle blew, even though I wasn't in the service. I used to be in the service. I wasn't in the service when I did this. And obviously I lost the job. I had a road accident a couple of days after that because your mind's not there. I was actually on Twitter at the time. I'm not on Twitter anymore. Not this year anyway, maybe next year. I'm off. And I was arguing with an air marshal called Greg Bagwell. He's a lovely guy, actually. I really like the guy. And after I lost my job and I had a road accident, I'm arguing with this guy, the only person in the whole world that wrote to me and said, I'm sorry about your road accident. I'm sorry about you losing your job. Just happened to be an air marshal that I was arguing with on Twitter. No one else. Can you make that shit up? No one else wrote to me. That's what loneliness is about, in a way. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Just because you're alone doesn't mean necessarily you're lonely, you know what I mean? But I do work at home, I do work by myself. Luckily my students are a great bunch of people and that keeps me in check, right? But it's not like I'm going out every day meeting people, working in an office environment. So I know people have asked me to talk about that. I will talk about that. I will talk about alcoholism, some other effects of that. I will talk about victimhood as well, that other people have asked me to speak about. And I will talk about lifting massive amounts of weight and just bleeding yourself into oblivion in the dark hours when everyone else is still asleep. So the Telegraph then reported RF diversity derived discriminated against 160 white men. That came out this morning, and they are kind of right, they are kind of wrong though, because what you have to remember is there's also promotions and awards that go on, OBEs, MBEs, that kind of stuff. So it didn't actually just discriminate against 160 white men. That was purely in the recruitment phase. That would be Joe Lincoln and Maria Byford's responsibility under the Chief of Air Staff, who were discriminating against these people. The discrimination went on with the awards. If you want to go and look up the awards since about 2016, you will see a spike where awards go to minorities and women. Tell me that's not true. Go and do the maths on it. Go and do the work on it. I've seen the work on it already. All right. So go and do the work. It's there. So basically discrimination against white men is not just happening at the entry point. It's happening throughout the entire system. If you actually look at that article, then Tobias Elwood was the person that was talking to them yesterday. And obviously there's a lot of things there you can read into this article. It's absolutely fine. One of the main things that kind of leaps up to me, though, obviously about Elizabeth Nicole, a woman, red blood running through her veins, a true patriot, would be wrapped in that flag when she dies, I'm sure, as I will be as well. Obviously resigned in disgust at the whole policy of discriminating against these white men in favor of anything else. My whole thing about the discrimination, guys, to be honest, and you know this, I know guys is a gendered term, off, I couldn't care less. My whole point about it is if you can discriminate against a white guy, then you can discriminate against anyone, women, men, it doesn't matter. It wasn't, as I said, just white guys that were discriminated against. At one point, it was all men that were stopped from entering flying training. That's the state of our Royal Air Force today. Yeah, all three services have been tasked with improving their diversity as they're predominantly made up of white men, as is the country. This is what upsets me. I don't even know why we entertain this anymore. We've gone into this weird woke land, haven't we, of just ineptitude. But look, the RAF went further on this target, insisted it wanted the number of female Air Force recruits to rise to 40% by the end of the decade. Why? Just ask me that. Answer me that. Why? Why do you want 40%? Well, why not 50%? The country is 50%. Why not 50%? Oh, it's a made up figure. That's why you want 40%. No other reasons. No other reasons at all. You also want 30% minorities. Why, by the way? Because minorities in the UK currently are 13.7. Why? Because it's a figure. You have no reason at all. You're making it up to try and do better than other services because you're an absolute child and you're supposed to be the Chief of Air Staff. You can see that me not drinking as much and actually lifting a massive amounts of weights is having a profound effect on my brilliance. Luckily, I've got the anger under control anyways. That was the main thing, wasn't it? They are struggling to retain women. That's one of the other things as well. And I think, to be fair, there is a non-statutory inquiry going on at the moment to have a look at the reason why people were discriminated against on entry. And I have talked about it. The comments are actually quite good. If you look at the comments in the Telegraph. Do not look at the comments in the Times. The Times seem to be like the Guardian at the moment. I don't really understand. Yeah, that's interesting. No one seems to bother about having diversity in jobs that are predominantly filled with ethnic minorities, such as maybe D&I managers and shit like that. Okay, let's have a look at a comment here. Any competent boss would not have accepted this person's resignation over blatant misuse of recruitment procedures. That's fact. I wouldn't have accepted it either. I would have asked why and what can we do to stop this. Instead, he and those responsible for instigating the diversity campaign, instead of merit, should have been asked to leave, which would be Joe Lincoln, would be Maria Byford and the Chief of Air Staff himself. This is criminal. There's no two ways against it. This is against the Equality Act. They knew what they were doing. It's against the Equality Act 2010. They were trying to improve the diversity statistics and they failed. And they failed because guys like me called it out. I lost a job over this, by the way. I had a big road accident. Should have been killed in that road accident. I wasn't. I was smashed up though, my shoulder here. Especially when, you know, I know I'm not a mass. I'm trying to get into lifting more just because it stops me, as I said, abusing myself through alcohol. But the shoulders, this shoulder, you know, when you're lifting, I'm doing dumbbells. I'm just having problems on this. I've dropped my dumbbell lifting right back now because, you know, well, it's just men, aren't we? Like men, I can lift tiger amount of dumbbell. You can't, whatever, you can't. Time and again, instances of gross stupidity and incompetence of woke mismanagement are allowed to pass with a mere report and promises of lessons learned. Yeah, we're going to learn the lessons. You didn't last time. We're going to learn them now. Yeah, we're going to learn them. Yeah, we're going to have a review to make sure we learn the lessons. It's all it amounts to negligence and an undermining of fundamental competencies for the roles involved. A thorough clear out of HR is the only way to restore some semblance of good practice. Diversity and inclusivity do not necessarily deliver any measurable increase in either productivity nor harmony in the workplace. In fact, the opposite is often true. Merit and professionalism does. That's actually true, actually, because one of the big problems that we've got here is a misunderstanding of the term diversity. See, here's the problem with ignorance, or we bring in Stonewall in, which is kind of the same thing. When you bring in these D&I advisors, managers, whatever it might be, You know, they think diversity is all about different colored people and women, and it's not. It's nothing to do with that whatsoever. I'm just, here's the thing, right? So I joined the Navy with the blackest guy you'd ever met. I'm not going to say the dude's name because he probably watches my channel. He's a good dude, actually. I haven't spoken to him for a while. Blackest dude ever. He went to Cambridge University, did really well, all this kind of stuff and everything, right? He was the same as me. He just spoke the same as me, had a cut glass accent. You wouldn't believe this dude, but he was black. And back then we didn't care. We didn't care. He's a good dude, right? If he's a dick, I would have said he's a dick, but he's not. He's a good dude. Flew rotary in the Navy for many years. It didn't matter, right? But we were the same. Diversity, we're the same people. It didn't matter whether he was a black dude or I was a white dude. It didn't matter. We didn't even think about it. Now we think about it. In fact, guys within the service that I speak to, I know a guy, I think his heritage is Uganda. I'm not going to mention his name. People will know who it is otherwise. But apparently he was saying that now he started to consider his race for the first time in his entire career. Never thought about it before. That is the legacy of these idiots in the senior positions of not only the Royal Air Force, but the Cabinet Office and the Ministry of Defence as well. This is the problem yesterday with Tobias Ellwood having to go at the seniors in the Royal Air Force. It was like, I wanted the seniors in the Royal Air Force to say, guys, you told us to do this. You told us to do this. This came out of the Cabinet Office. This is the woke civil service. This is the whole civil service, the long march through the institutions, whatever it is, the whole kind of, we're going to have a socialist United Kingdom, which has been the dream for many years, since the 40s. And now you've told us to do this. The Ministry of Defence have told us to do this. We're doing it. And now you're calling us out for it. What's going on? You know, this is the problem. What's going on? It's an absolute clown show. It's a joke. It really is. These comments, we can go on these comments forever just because they're fun to, but we're not going to. We're going to skip off this now. We're going to have a look at something else. Yeah, more women left the military last year than joined. So we're getting this outflow, really, and it is quite big. And if you look at the statistics, we've got, I think it was like 30% fewer people joined the military this year, and I think 15% more left. So we are getting this massive correction. People will say that's in line with what we want, Tim. Is it really? Because you're getting hemorrhaging people out. In a way, what we're doing here is we're promising people the world and we're not being able to deliver it. That's fair enough. We can do that, but they just wake up. People are clever, aren't they? If you say all of a sudden, come to the military, it's everything that you want. You go to the military and it isn't, moldy houses, poor overseas deployments, whatever, that kind of stuff, then of course, you're going to leave. And these people are leaving because they're clever people. Tends to be the best people that do lots of work and get themselves into the military. And this is what's happened to the women here that have joined the military. They've been promised the world. Jordan Peterson was chatting to Chris Williamson on a podcast the other day. And I think Dr. Peterson was saying something along the lines of when he was doing lots of counseling for women who are in their sort of 20s in law, that was right, in Canada. He said these women were attractive, successful, educated, purpose-driven women, done very well, always being top in the high school, always being top in the junior school, always gone into these high law firms, doing very well, made partnership by the age of 30, and then they left. He said it was the women that were leaving. Almost every single woman, I think he said every single woman, to be fair, left. You can find it on YouTube somewhere. And they were discussing why. And it was like these women were so clever. They're just clever women and they're clever people. That's why they're there in these businesses. And they realized that actually they could have a great career. Remember Sheryl Sandberg, lean in, promising you can do everything, career and all that kind of stuff. Not true. We know it's not true. You can't have a great career and be a great mom and have a family and everything else. You can't do it. Men will go because they're dicks. We'll go and do 80, 90 hours a week to become the CEO on the off chance they are going to become a CEO. And a woman, she wants to do it as well. It's a massive battleground and she wants to have a family. She can't. So we're saying to women, come and fly big fighter jets in the Air Force, by the way. Come and do this. Yeah, war is a masculine domain, but now we can do a lot of typing, can't we? Tell that to people on the Ukrainian battlefield, how many angry tweets they put out that have killed loads of Russians, if you want. But let's pretend that when we bring 40% into the military in 2040, that they can do lots of aggressive typing and that's going to work. Therefore, we can have loads of women in there. It's not going to work. It's not going to be true. And I think women join, they realize that. Most definitely what happened with these law firms. They got to the point where they're being made partner at 29 and they went, hang on, I can be a partner in the law firm, earning the big money, or I can have a family, I can have a life, I can have a less stressful job. Yeah. Promise women the world and women won't believe you, luckily, and they'll leave. And that's what's happening here. And all that shit just leads to this shit. RAF admits urgent need to solve shortage of trained pilots. This jet was US recently. A Hawk T2 engine exploded. It was actually the turbine, not the compressor, but we know we've got a compressor issue on the 951 and the 871 engine, turbomecha Adore. Rolls-Royce have just come out and said they're having a mare. They're a nightmare of a company being beaten everywhere. Apparently they outsourced to an Indian company, and every chance the Indians are just getting used to making really complicated materials, and maybe the stuff they're handing back is exploding in the back end of jets. I don't know. But either way, flying training suffering, and it needs to solve a shortage of trained pilots. A lot of pilots I know want to get out of the Air Force right now. And I was chatting to guys this morning in the Rotary. I know guys in jets, obviously, they're now paying, I think it's £25,000 or trying to pay £25,000. Is it for 2 years to retain a qualified weapons instructor? And a lot of these QIs, these weapons instructors on Typhoon and F-35 they're clever people, right? And they can do something called math. So if they're doing the maths, they can add up and they can work out what 50 grand over 2 years is. And they can go, well, if I had 25 grand, I'm a higher rate taxpayer anyway, because I'm on 70 grand or 65 grand. If I add that 25 on, I'm already taxed at 25 at 40%. So I'm not getting that. So what am I getting really? I'm probably going to be getting something like maybe 13 grand, maybe $1 grand extra a month. Is that worth it? £250 a week. That's a bag of shopping. That's a tank of fuel. And that's maybe, yeah, for a family bag of shopping nowadays, shopping is expensive. Is it worth doing it? Or do I get out early and start a new career where I can co-locate my family somewhere where the wife can work as well? That's the problem with the military. Remember, you used to be able to live somewhere where the wife could work. And now on the main bases, if you look at fast jet bases, Marham, Coningsby, Lossiemouth, Valley, all on the coast, all in kind of remote places. Go and fly helicopters, be it Odium or Benson, or go and fly multi-engines at Bryce Norton. You're kind of fine, but either way, whatever. I'm just going to finish on a few points then. Obviously, this is the problem, isn't it? They want the military to be diverse. They don't know why. I did criticize diversity. Diversity is to do with values and standards. It's about presenting your best values and standards and you saying, hey, this is us with our values and standards. If you got the same values and standards, come and join us. And people do. If you say, hey, you got the black skin or you're the woman, you can join us now. People realize it's just an absolute crock of shit. You've drunk the Kool-Aid. It's not going to work, and they might come in for a little bit. They might leave, all right, because you've shown no value in them other than their skin color or their gender. You haven't shown value in them, in their expertise or what they've done and how they learned. You just said they're the right color. And I'm reading now for some notes I took during it live. It was about 2.5 hours long. One of the things, it starts off there, they were talking about how when you only have 8 squadrons of fast jets, and as opposed to 36 squadrons when Chief of Air Staff was around, you can only have 1 squadron in one airspace at one time. But that's just one of the things. Aircraft are expensive now, and he's only got so much money to use. The way they were being questioned, I thought was quite disrespectful, actually. And I felt sorry for Mike and Rich there. I thought they were answering as best they possibly could a lot of the questions. And some of the things they said were disingenuous from the Chief of Air Staff and Rich, but I know why they were saying them, and it was going to be something that was probably lost. And yeah, it was going to be something that was lost. I mean, there were questions as to why the Hawk was no longer successful as an airplane, and I would have said, well, I didn't build it, mate. I'm a user, I just bought some. I'm in the Air Force. I didn't build the Hawk. I don't know why the Hawk isn't successful anymore. It's just an old aircraft, whatever, you know what I'm saying? The Chief of Air Staff got this big thing about synthetics and and I get it, because I use synthetics at the moment with my flight school, don't I? But yeah, I get it. He didn't explain himself very well. A bit about underfunding. There was a bit about this is something that pissed me off a little bit, talking about guys going across to China, and it was guys in the masculine term of guys, to teach Chinese pilots. And instead of just saying we're going to try and look at a way of maybe helping people find employment when they leave, especially people in niche arms, maybe such as Royal Air Force, are they still called Royal Air Force Police or Royal Air Force Regiment? I don't know what they're called now. Maybe like a gunner in the regiment with a unique skill set. How can we get them into a particular trade when they leave? Or how can we get a pilot like me into something? They just said, no, we're just going to try and stop it. And we'd like you to create some legislation, if possible, to maybe stop these people going out and teaching people overseas. Yeah, threatening people with the Official Secrets Act. They've threatened me with that pretty soon, I think, even though I'm teaching a video game. That's the thing. I'm teaching a video game. And because the video game happens to have airplanes in it that I'm teaching on, at some point someone's going to come to me and say, you shouldn't be teaching them that because you taught people to fly this airplane. And it's like, now the diversity drive, we pretty much talk about that. We've spoken about that at length, I think. And I think Lizzie Nicole, it sounds like, is going to take the Air Force. She was the group captain that stepped down. Going to take the Air Force to a tribunal. That would be brilliant. Why not? And I think she should. I was going to. I did look at it. I hadn't been affected personally by it, so I couldn't necessarily take the service to what I wanted to take the service to. So I couldn't really. And so I'm glad that maybe Lizzie Nicole is possibly doing that. Possibly, I don't know whether she is or not, by the way. Yeah, okay. As I said, I did lose a job over those videos. You know how I feel about this diversity rubbish. And that's because I flew people in the jets here. I never saw what skin color they were when I was in the jet. And that jet will kill you just as fast. It doesn't care whether you're a girl or a boy. It doesn't care whether, or in between, whatever that shit is. It doesn't care whether you got black skin, white skin, half black skin. It doesn't care. It's just going to kill you in the same way if you're not good enough. And that's why we should be attracting the best people. And you don't attract the best people if you say that actually the people we're going to recruit primarily are those that are minorities or whatever, because we want to just get this weird kind of quota up so we can be representative of the population at large. Not that the military has to be, but the police force does, because the police by consent, and the military just has to be the hardest, most angry tigers that you want to send into the battlefield that you can possibly find. I suggest that you don't populate your military heavily with women. Then just, it's a different thing, isn't it? Women are great at a lot of things, but they just can't carry the weight, or just whatever it might be. And they just don't seem to want to do it in the same way that men do, because men are a bit stupid like that. You know what I mean? Men are like, yo, I'll put a big pack on, I'll march for miles. And women are better in different roles. It just is, isn't it? And that's not all women. That's not all men. You can't say anything anymore, can you? I am tired, I must admit. I think it's important that I sort of took a look at my alcohol consumption and actually went and picked up some big weights. And I've driven that into my school as well. We've got weekly accountability in there. If anyone's interested in that, get into my school. It's not just about flying airplanes. In fact, a little part of it is about flying airplanes. It's actually about getting better, making yourself a better person for everyone, then offering them freely to the world. I can talk more about this, and I will, because people have asked me to talk about loneliness, alcoholism, self-destructive behavior, relationships, all these kind of things. They want me to get back to that, not with this diversity rubbish. I'm going to be doing that now on this channel, guys. Thanks so much, Tim Davis, Flagship Performance.